Hello everybody. So today I want to talk to you about the Bitcoin proxies. They are in the valley of despair right now. It's been a month. This too shall pass is eventually the theme of this video, and what I'll tell you at the end is I think it will pass. There may be a lot of reasons as to why these proxies are getting so cheap. But first of all, let's look at the damage. Bitcoin is roughly flat. I mean, over the past month, this is Bitcoin. It oscillated up, down, but over the past month, roughly flat. You know, a month ago was 117,400, and right now, as I record this, 117,700. So Bitcoin has not moved in a month. But, and I'm going to use free proxies, through the lens of free proxies, CleanSpark down 22%, Mara down 19%, and strategy down, let's call it 20%. So as you can see, over the short term, over 1 month, proxies are roughly down 20%, while Bitcoin is flat. So this is getting ridiculous in my view. In my view, you know, Bitcoin's price hasn't changed, but these got way cheaper, like 20% cheaper, and this is in the light of very good news. I'll go over these three stocks. These three stocks have had very good news. We are doing well. The conference calls, the Q2 calls were great for these stocks, and yet they went down. You may remember Strategy. Strategy went down 8% after a call, which frankly was really good and really gave a lot of answers. And so my guess is that a lot of these stocks are down because of the current narratives and the low volumes of August. There's people leaving stocks, there's people selling stocks, there's not a lot of people buying stocks. Traders are not at their trading desks. And you have a lot of violent narratives of people who are very sour because maybe they got into these proxies 2 months ago, month and a half ago. And typically when you're sour, you're going to be much louder. I believe this period will pass and we will see over all-time highs on this stock. At least that is what I believe, and I have my money on this bet, right? It's like strategy is my largest position, so I do have a lot riding on this bet as well. And you know, I find them right now in a very interesting territory. These stocks are getting cheap. So let's get started with the first stock today, Strategy. So the decoupling of strategy down 20% compared to Bitcoin flat, that's definitely not driven by fundamentals. Why? Because if you look at Strategy objectively, they have had the most successful IPO of the year. Not the most successful preferred IPO, the most successful IPO period of the year was Strategy's IPO, and it happens to be the latest preferred IPO. Insane at 2.5 billion in demand. They posted pretty crazy earnings, thanks to the accounting change. You know, 14 billion in operating income. A lot of people in the strategy community were expecting a big pop on earnings, expecting the market to be surprised. No, that's what priced in. The market dumped. And then we got a surprise. One was a mild surprise, which was the increase in guidance of BTC yield from 25% prior to 30%. They increased the guidance on BTC yield. They increased the guidance on Bitcoin gain from 15 billion to 20 billion. They've provided very bullish guidance, to say the least, very bullish guidance to say the least. That didn't move the stock. The stock kept going down for a month, minus 20%. And more importantly, and you know, the jury is still out to figure out whether this will have been a mistake or not. I made a video on this. My last video on Strategy was on this. Feel free to watch it to get my thoughts on him stopping the common ATM. But stopping the common ATM was a request of 2/3 of the internet. And he did that. So we literally had 4 amazing news on Strategy stock. You know, and you know, no more ATM until common ATM until we get past 2.5. Of course, we're nowhere near that. We are about 1.5 now on price to NAV. So we got all of this amazing news. And how are we rewarded? We are rewarded by the lowest NAV in a year, about 1.5, back to the level of March 05, right, when Bitcoin was at like 76,000 or 78,000 or something, back to these levels, right, when Bitcoin dipped. So we've seen a compression in the price to NAV, but that is not specific to strategy. Like I said, that's not specific to strategy. Here's another stock who is in this valley of despair, who is in despair right now, and that is Mara. Now, Mara committed a big sin in my book, which is they stopped dilution to pay for the electric bill, and they decided to sell the Bitcoin. Ask yourself, has Mara been rewarded by deciding to stop hodling and selling the Bitcoin? Did the market reward CleanSpark, I meant CleanSpark. Has the market rewarded CleanSpark at all for funding the Bitcoin, funding the operating expenses by selling the Bitcoin? No, Mara did not reward that. So why did we stop hodling? We used to be a 100% hodl company on Mara, on CleanSpark. I keep saying Mara. On CleanSpark, CleanSpark used to be 100% hodl. And the former CEO now, that CEO resigned, the former CEO decided to be the adult in the room. That's what he said on the conference call. We're the adult in the room. We're actually selling Bitcoin to fund electricity, to pay for the expenses of the business. And Wall Street has not given any reward. And so Mara was in this perfect situation where they were trading at about 2x NAV, but they were acquiring Bitcoin at $44,000, right? That's the detailed cost. $44,000 in the quarter. That's what they paid for Bitcoin mined, and that cost is mostly electricity. So you were in a situation where you were diluting at a 2x MNAV to buy Bitcoin at 44,000, right? That was really, really accretive. And now you're in a situation where, you're still producing 120,000 of value for 44,000, but you have to sell a part of that value that you produce to pay your expensive. I believe in the long run, this is less good. This is way less interesting to me in the long run. And so we'll see what the new CEO does. Maybe the new CEO goes back to a mix of dilution and full hodl bag. It is what I hope. But the point is, Mara is firing on all cylinders. They have one of the lowest cost to mine, while also having a Bitcoin bag. And in my view, that Bitcoin bag can be subtracted from the value of a market cap because the Bitcoin is easily sellable, right? And they have grown their hash substantially. They've achieved 50 exahash. They have a very modern mining fleet. Their adjusted EBITDA, which is my proxy for cash flow, was 378 million trailing 12 months. So 378 million trailing 12 months. Keep in mind, so what would that be? If you just look at the market cap to EBITDA, that's a 7.2x. That's dirt cheap already. But you looking at market cap is not the right way to do it, in my view, because they have an asset that you can't discuss. They have an asset that has an actual value, that it can be easily sold on factor markets. You can sell it everywhere. You can sell that market all over. It's Bitcoin. You can sell Bitcoin anywhere. It's a bona fide asset, guys. You can sell Bitcoin. So you got to remove the Bitcoin. You got to remove the Bitcoin from the value of MCAP, from the value of Mara. So you do 2.7 billion minus 1.5 billion divided by 378. So that's 1.24 billion divided by 378, and you get a Bitcoin adjusted price to EBITDA of a 3.2. This is so ridiculous. The company will generate cash in an amount above the excess market cap of over Bitcoin in a matter of 3 years. And that doesn't even take into account the expectation of the increase of the hodl bag over the next 3 years. So I look at this company as heavily undervalued. I find CleanSpark very compelling under $10. No financial advice, of course. And the last one is Mara. So Mara, at this point, I consider Mara the safest in terms of MNAV compression because we're at 0.97, and I followed Mara for a while. Mara rarely gets below like a 0.05. I'm not even sure that 0.95. I meant. I'm not even sure that has happened. The Mara effectively has its Bitcoin bag, its Bitcoin stash. It has it as the floor. It's the floor, and we're seeing a 3% discount right now. Maybe in the bear of the bear, maybe you're gonna see like a 7 or 8% discount. And frankly, Mara should be looking at buybacks right now. I don't know what they can do in the way of buybacks. Maybe wait if there's, maybe save some cash to see if there's ever a bigger market dislocation. But you're in a situation where Mara should probably do a buyback. And Mara can do that, right? Mara is not a closed-end fund at the end of the day. It's an actual company with assets, with big assets, right? Speaking of assets, so we know we have that wind farm in Texas, 130 megawatt, very big system. We know they have tons of data centers, tons of IP investment in Auradine, which is like a Bitcoin miner type stuff. They own miners too. I'll get to the fleet in a second. But they recently announced an acquisition, very interesting acquisition in EDF's AI infrastructure. Anyways, what's very interesting about it is that what EDF does and what Exion does, and this reminds me a lot of what Nebius does. When I look at the software stack that they bought here, I get reminded a lot of what Nebius has built in order to sell its AI HPC infrastructure. They have a software layer. It seems like they bought a controlling stake in this company. It does not seem. They bought a controlling stake in this company, which has a lot of AI solutions. And that's very interesting. And it seems like in the mix, I can't really find data on the data centers that they bought in this, but when you go see what Exion has, it seems like they have 4 data centers. So they bought 4 data centers and a software stack, and they didn't buy the whole thing, but they bought a controlling stake for 168 million. I think this is going to be a very interesting play, not necessarily a bad acquisition in my view, even the Wall Street always screams acquisitions bad. This aligns with a potential shift towards AI HPC, but it has to be done under good conditions. And by good conditions, I mean you got to have the software, because it's, Nebius is showing their way, and their way is you got to sell it with the software. If you want to get into that business, if you don't have software, it's a much tougher sell to just sell the raw metal, the raw GPU. But anyways, what I love about Mara is that they're not giving up on the Bitcoin. They are in many ways a Bitcoin maxi Bitcoin miner, and I know this is going to make a lot of Bitcoin maxis mad, because they spammed, quote unquote, the blockchain with a picture of the President of the United States to commemorate Election Day, and so I think a lot of Bitcoin maxis were upset. That's why there's a lot of negative sentiment on Mara. A lot of people think Mara are not good stewards on the blockchain, partially because of some of the spam that they've inscribed on the blockchain. I personally don't partake in these debates. I just look at the deal and I see Mara is trading below the Bitcoin bag. I look at actions and I see that Mara has not sold Bitcoin so far. I'm quite impressed. Or if it did back then, it was very little. I also see that Mara is not dogmatic. They are earning a yield. Now, of course, yield is still very scary when you hear Bitcoin and yield together, but there will be a time where you can earn yield on Bitcoin. There will be a time where you can pair the cash on the balance sheet with your Bitcoin. You can pair it in a liquidity token, and you can go list that liquidity token and earn yield on the pair in a more secure type DeFi way. And slowly people are recovering from the whole FTX fiasco. I anticipate Strategy will be the last company to do this. So they're not doing DeFi here, but they're doing kind of something similar with TradFi, and they have trading arrangements, collateralized financing, and they try to generate income on 1/3, not less than 1/3. 31% of their total Bitcoin is now generating a yield for them. Their team, they have a special team that used to work in hedge funds, specialized with that. And on the call, they did say that their goal is to go slow, and they diversify, and they have so many different partners in order that if there were something to go wrong, you wouldn't lose the 31% of the stack. So diversification, and some sort of a lending arrangement, but not always lending, sometimes collateral. They seem to be pretty confident about that on the call. We know that for example, Metaplanet does something similar. Well, they do something with options, right? They do put options. So it's somewhat similar in that you take risk, right? You could be on the hook for a much higher priced Bitcoin if Bitcoin were to go down. But I like to see them play in the derivatives space, although this is more lending than derivatives. But I like to see companies begin to experiment and work on potentially generating a yield, because that paves the way at some point for MSTR to do that. And if MSTR does that, then all of a sudden people will realize the value of the insane MSTR stack, because in my view, make no mistake, there will be a time, maybe in the 2030s, where earning a yield on Bitcoin, in Bitcoin, where earning that yield is going to be common. And these companies, whether it is Mara, whether it is anything that happens on the Lightning Network, whether it is all of these other layer ones that allow you to list BTC dollar pairs, whether it is stable coins, these stable coins, some of them might be backed by Bitcoin or by Bitcoin bonds. There will be a way to earn a yield of Bitcoin on Bitcoin. I have no idea what that yield is going to be, but nonetheless, there will be a way, and they're paving the way for that. They're also still expanding, which is stunning to me. They target now 75 exahash, and this is because they keep their old miners. They keep their old miners and they just add to the fleet. And their old miners will just dispatch to spots where electricity is near zero, next to zero, like that wind farm where you just turn on the miners when the wind is blowing. And lastly, my change in narrative on Mara has been the fleet. I've said this in my last thing. They've increased tremendously the fleet. I used to say that their fleet is not as good as the miners, and it's true. You go back on Q2 2024, they had awful efficiency, almost 25 joules of efficiency. They are now at 18. This is getting pretty close to state-of-the-art miners. This is getting pretty close. This is Block's new miner, Jack Dorsey's new miner that he released. Was it on Thursday? He released it. Anyways, made a lot of buzz on Bitcoin on social media. Brand new miner released by Jack Dorsey, trying to compete against Bitmain. You can see they're at 14 joules per terahash in their first iteration. They're at 14. So the next gen new, and of course, Bitmain has even better efficiency, but it's liquid cooling. So we should compare air-cooled to air-cooled. It's a little higher than Bitmain, even for air-cooled. I think Bitmain is at 12. But 14 for a brand new state-of-the-art miner, and Mara is at 18. I would argue they're closing that gap, and they're doing pretty well on their efficiency, much better. So they're mining Bitcoin more efficiently. So if you consider all of the positives on Mara and you take into account the fact that, I wish I could have calculated for you a PE or a BTC adjusted market cap to adjusted EBITDA for you, but I can't do that because it's negative. It's negative. The value of Mara is negative. It's like it's yeah, that's what it means. So it's like there's more value in Bitcoin in the stock per share. You have more Bitcoin per share. Right, like it's $15 a share. You 1568. You probably have 1580 or 1590 worth of Bitcoin in there. So anyways, this stock is trading at a steep discount in my view, and I like Mara very much. So this is nonsensical. This is nonsensical. What's happening to this valuation? I will conclude with this. I know sentiment plays a big role, and right now the sentiment is very negative. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, we're jumping off ship and we're moving to BMNR. We're moving to Tom Lee's Ethereum treasury company." I'm not so sure about that because people who believe in Bitcoin, they tend to be more extreme, or at least more of a maximalist. I would argue for having talked and seen a lot of strategy bulls. I've been covering strategy for a long time. Like you may not know, but sometimes I get negative comments just for covering anything other than Bitcoin. So I'm not so sure that people are jumping off the ship. Some people are asset agnostic. I tend to be more asset agnostic, even though I fully believe Bitcoin is superior. But trying to say it's because people are jumping to other treasury companies, I am not so sure about that. Maybe a small portion. I think the bigger portion is the summer. Like I said, the summer, people are at the beach, at least in the northern hemisphere. But it's also the shortage, how much short there are. And, if I look at strategy, 8.4%, that may not seem like a lot. It's actually about 3 times as much for a company of this size. I look at random companies about 100 billion. Your random company about 100 billion market cap has about 3 times less short interest than this. And of course, smaller market cap, sometimes you see more shorting. But for CleanSpark and Mara, I mean, it has gotten entirely ridiculous, minus 21%. So that's short. 21% of the shares are held short. And then for Mara, look at that, 28%. And so when I look at that, and I'm not saying that's the case, but when you look at a stock like Mara and you see it has 28% short interest, you gotta ask yourself if a lot of that sentiment. Sometimes I wonder, and we know there's a lot of bots. There's a lot of bots in crypto. How many Mara haters? How much of that anti-Mara propaganda is, for example, bots? Like, do we know? Do we know how many bots actually go in comments? Probably on my videos, there's probably half the comments are probably bots. YouTube is getting a little better at deleting, but a lot of that negative sentiment could be manufactured by bots. And I'm not saying hedge funds do that, right? Hedge funds are righteous. They would never do that. They would never spin up a bunch of bots. But it's also something to consider. Like the sentiment is part of the sentiment manufactured, and are these short interests? Why is this so high? Right. Short interest went 28%. Like this is similar to what AMC had in short interest back in the day. So, anyways, this was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.